You're listening to Tonebender's Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. Sound Ideas had a great time at NAB this year, connecting with professionals across media, post-production, and broadcast. They've launched a limited-time NAB sale around the event, offering 50% off their catalog of professional sound effect libraries. Due to strong interest, that sale has now been extended for a limited time. So even though NAB is wrapped, there's still a chance to take advantage of the savings, but not for long. You can check out the extended sale at sound-ideas.com. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders. My name is Tim Muirhead and I'm sitting in beautiful Stage 2 at Formosa's Hollywood facility. Today I'll be talking with the sound team from The Rip, the recent Netflix film starring Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. The Rip is already one of the most watched shows in the history of Netflix. The film follows a police special task force that finds itself in a bad situation and has to figure out who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. Today with me, we have 4 members of the Rip sound team, and they are going to talk us through their work on the film, so let's meet them now. First up, we have supervising sound editor and re-recording mixer Craig Mann. It's great to see you, Craig. How are you today?
Good, Tim. Good to see you.
And what end of the faders were you on for this film?
Dialogue and music.
Dialogue and music. Excellent. Next up, we have co-supervising sound editor Daniel Pagan. It's great to meet you, Daniel.
Great to meet you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining me today. We also have Chase Keene, who is the dialogue and ADR supervisor. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. How are you doing?
I'm very good. And finally, we have Laura Wiest, who is working on the other end of the faders on the mix stage. We've never met before. It's great to meet you as well.
Great to meet you.
The Rip is a movie that's kind of all about tension. The idea is that the viewers don't really know what's going on. And I'm wondering if we can maybe go through how each of you tried to bring that out with your work in the sound. Maybe Craig, do you want to take that first?
No, I do not. No, strike that. Definitely, we were relying a lot on Clint Shorter, I think, that is the composer of this. I think he did a fantastic job of providing us tension material for a lot of the longer scenes in there that really kind of kept us sort of pinned in and sort of drew us in more as it went along. Clint's done all of Joe's movies except for one.
Joe's the director.
Joe Carnahan's the director.
Effects-wise, the toughest thing is, especially when they're in the house, in the neighborhood, there are no cars, there are no people, but we also don't want to tip your hand that, hey, this place is empty until they realize. So the hardest part was just keeping it somewhat busy, but then really emptying out the neighborhood as they realize that, A, no one else is there, there's no cars, there's nothing. So just keeping it very empty, but still filling up the space, too. It's kind of the hard part.
There's one scene where we meet Desi for the first time, and in that scene, there's a lot of practical dog barks happening. So it was important to carry on all those dog barks throughout, which keeps the tension going when both of the gentlemen end up interacting with her. So that was kind of in dialogue, keeping the PFX and the different elements of the show together continuously was important. There also was a section where there was a particular squeak that we made sure we had to preserve in PFX that Joe was intended that it had to be there. So there's little elements like that throughout that kind of help keep the tension moving along.
So you're saying that in the scene when they first arrive at Desi's house,
Yep.
Yes.
the dog's barking was actually at the shoot?
Yes, it was all practical.
All there, yeah.
All there.
There's a tiny bit of dog added as they approach the house, I think. That was not practical dog pee. That was dog added. That was fully peeing. But other than that, that was the real dog
Yes, the
all
banging
over
on
the
the
dialogue.
gate. All of that is definitely not us. We were tied to that. In a couple places, Danny had to try to match that when they're upstairs, but that's all.
Yeah.
It's all real dog.
And that worked, that as Chase said, that worked real well because they're just having to yell over this dog and just, it reminded me a little bit of the Boogie Night scene in the house when they're throwing firecrackers. Yeah, it was sort of that is what that reminded me of.
It's a really cool scene, and I had a question about that because I was because you don't actually see the dog in the majority of their conversation.
No. Joe just kind of had the dog going. I think it was to just help with the tension of the scene. There was very few takes where the dog wasn't just going and just barking the entire time. So that also kind of proved a problem with dialogue, clarity as well. But it was recorded well, so we didn't really have any issues. But yeah, the dog is all practical. So
Shouts out to Willie Burton on production for this one. Yeah.
The production sound mixer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of blows my mind. I don't know why. I just assumed that you guys put all that dog in afterwards.
well, when I first got on the scene, I was like, oh man, here we go.
We have
But
to loop everything.
I was like,
when we got
yeah,
into it, it was like,
that's
all
what
right.
you initially thought when you got to the scene. It's like, okay, yeah, we have to re-record everything. Okay, get Ben and Matt in, but then like you start cutting through the scene, you're like, okay, like this actually all works, and you can look for alts here and there and find like the little words that you need to kind of get that clarity through.
Yeah, we altered a few things.
Yeah,
but that
yeah. I
was
mean,
it,
I think the one character, Desi, had a couple lines there that we had all because there was just dog, too much dog on it, and we just need so you alt that, and then you add the dog bark, back in. But yeah, for the scene, it worked really well. And in my head, how you want dialogue wise, you want everything to be very clean. It kind of questioned my, I was like, usually I'm like, oh, like we should loop this, but in fact, it's totally fine, and it works because it's the production. And Joe would rather have the production be as it was and what he shot today than go through and loop everything.
Not a fan of ADR.
Oh yeah, no, Joe, especially when you go on the ADR stage, you have a cue up there. He has no problem telling you, what is this doing here? Get this out of here. Like he'll say no. So that's the other challenge is, you have to be able to find the alts, make the dialogue work with what Joe wants, because Joe doesn't want really any ADR anywhere in the film if possible.
Okay, we're going to come back to that. Daniel, do you want to talk about your and Craig's relationship as like how do you work as co-supervising sound editors? How do you divide stuff up?
There's a lot of shouting and then hugging. And
Yeah, crying.
some crying.
Well, I'll handle mostly like the dialogue ADR side, and I'll take over all the effects and Foley and manage that and wrangle it.
How long have we been working together?
I think 10, 11 years.
The start of Chase in my career was with this team.
Oh, wow.
It already obviously done the years, but Chase and I, this was our start, was actually with starting off with Joe, and this has been the team.
One of the first things that I'm not sure you or Chase was on that, but there was a little film called Stretch that Joe did that had to be in 2012 or 13.
Yeah, that's actually how we met Joe. And then on the next one, El Chicano and Boss Level, Chase and Danny cut. And that's been the great thing is Joe's been really great about just keeping everyone on. So there's like a shorthand. If I need something, when we're mixing, Danny already knows what it is. I can just say, hey, look at this. And it's great when you've had those years of working together with the same team.
The guns in this film sound really great, particularly the garage shootout scene, which is an interesting space because it's a contained, echoey kind of cement garage. And then also just right off the hop at the beginning of the film, police officer gets shot by the water. The guns in that are like, it's quiet up until that moment. And then these guns come out and just like rock the entire room. I'm wondering if maybe we can talk about how you design those guns, how you mix those guns. I guess, are you going on a stage before it's going back to the Avid suite?
Secretly,
I was going to say
we're doing that. Yes, a lot of times we're sneaking in here or there. If it's not my generous size cutting room, we're sneaking into some open stage just to kind of hear the stuff.
Yes, because I usually like, before Joe sees it or hears anything that's Avid, I usually like to do a pass of it. So Danny's cut everything, and then we will rough mix it, I guess, in that space. But even though it was for Netflix, for Joe, we still mix this theatrically first and then pared it down to Netflix specs. But I guess that's the one good thing that Danny and I have worked with him for a while. We know it can never be loud enough. It can never be, it's never too big. Yeah. He'll always say, like, okay, that sounds great. It just needs something else added to it. And that's when I can just look at Danny and be like, okay, we need to, add, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one thing that's nice since we've worked with him for so long. We just know I knew going into what this needs to sound like and what he's expecting. But yes, it's always
We also had several rounds of the garage. I feel like we went through a few rounds of guns on there and some things sometimes because they're
like
all
editing passes, you mean?
Material-wise.
Yeah. Okay.
All the guns are the same weapon, and the first few rounds, things were just sounding too samey. So we were like, this needs more personality, like Matt's gun.
Yeah.
I punched that up a bit, I think, because it just was like, we need something better. And then we all kind of so everybody's was a bit different. So you could sort of read the differences.
And then making sure the outside guns, which you never see, needed to sound
Yes.
different from everything else. So it's pretty much just placing everything correctly, and Atmos helps out a lot with that. All the impacts are objects. Ricochets are objects. So as long as stuff moves around a lot, it'll feel bigger and fuller than it could be. So,
Daniel, what's your philosophy when cutting a gun shootout?
Like to start off with the original gun. So, if it's an M16 or a Beretta, start off with that and add a sweetener and a low end just to beef it up a little bit more. And then Laura does her magic and just makes them sound great.
And when you're cutting, are you doing any panning or anything, or do you leave that all to her?
Occasionally, but not. I'll leave it mostly to Laura.
I would say more so on this one. I think I do more of the, panning and putting stuff in the right place. But certainly in other shows, Danny's definitely doing that. But Joe's shows, I'm very particular.
Territorial?
Yeah, okay, yes. I'm very territorial over his stuff.
You want it how you
So
want
I get more hands-on earlier than effects mixer usually would. Usually you don't see it until a temp.
Mm-hmm.
But just on his particular stuff, I'm more involved in editorial than you usually would be.
And how does that work out scheduling-wise? Like, are you not on another show at that time? Or
Could be.
so if you are on another show, you're doing it in the evenings, or are you just waiting for off days?
Could be.
Usually waiting for off days, and I'll just do a week of editorial or something. It just kind of depends on whatever else we're juggling.
Yeah, the good thing about always being together crew-wise is that we can always juggle things around. Like, what, we need to look at this today. Like, let's get that up today. Hey, how's this thing cooking? Let's have a look at this. We can give a round of notes on it. That seems fine for now. Like, where's the next fire? So I think that's, what we're doing this. We need you to come in and look at something. Oh, that's all right. I'm there anyway. Like, let's put it up and see what happens at lunch. Like, all right, cool.
There's another really fun sound scene in this movie. The average person watching wouldn't necessarily even think of it as a fun sound scene, but when they first discover the money behind the wall, they then go downstairs and start interrogating Desi while the rest of the team is destroying a wall directly above them. And this is like a moment perfect for Atmos.
Yep.
And then also dialogue, while they're talking, there's debris raining down on them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering if we can maybe talk how you built the scene, the designing the sounds off screen, dealing with the dialogue as debris raining down, and just the idea of like how excited were you when you were like, this is exactly the scene that Atmos was invented for.
At least for the fact of the debris coming down, there was points where alts had to be found because the debris was right on top of lines.
Mm-hmm.
But the debris wasn't so heavy in the fact that we had to go through and alt all kinds of material. It was recorded fairly well, and at least for me in that scene, there wasn't too many issues with the debris. There was off-stage debris that was going on, and there also was, off-stage, like, kind of talking that was happening, but that was all separate from what was actually recorded when we're sitting with Desi and everybody at that section. So, I mean, the main thing was just trying to make it so it all played consistently and was smooth. There's noise and things like that going on too, but, with all the technology we have nowadays with noise reduction, I feel that almost any scene can be saved to an extent nowadays with all the technology that's there. I mean, when I'm cutting, I probably have like 4 different plugins up for noise reduction. Like, I don't go to them unless I have to, but it's like, you have Clear Up, you have Hush, Revoice, Absentia, RX, you have Isolate, and then you also have the ability with going through and RXing all kinds of elements out. Like, I mean, I can find myself in a scene that's 4 minutes and spend 2 days because I'm in RX, like literally taking clicks and pops and like trying to get some debris out or, getting tones out. Like, I mean, I use Absentia like almost on every single scene that I go through because there's always some kind of tone. And that makes it so it's much cleaner. So Craig can just worry about doing his levels in EQ than like sitting there and trying to notch out some annoying tone that's just sitting, in the dialogue.
A lot of the debris was Foley for that scene, so it was pretty clean. dialogue stuff. Chase separated the offstage, off camera from on camera, and I objected. And I usually, for offstage stuff, I will put the dialogue through pre and use alter verb next door for that. So, and then that I was putting directly up in the ceiling. So you have the real, for me, that puts it behind a wall enough that it's kind of believable verb-wise. That's kind of the secret of that. I think the thumping was a throwback to another Joe movie.
Yeah, we had recycled.
We used some of the we recorded. Did we record stuff for that? I'm pretty sure.
Recorded stuff.
We recorded
for,
Sledgehammer for Cop Shop, and Joe had a similar gag going on for that film where you saw off screen, and we recorded a bunch of sledgehammering stuff, and we kind of so we sort of used some of that again because it was sort of the same thing. So little cheat there.
So I guess when you're cutting, Daniel, you're stuck with when the debris is falling down visually to when you can build the hits and such.
Yes. Or look for the debris, see it, then give it a beat. So
I feel like the temp of that too was very loud, and we kind of toned it down a bit because at some point it was once we got music in there, we wanted to sort of it kind of turns to a bit more of a sentimental scene from Desi.
Yeah, especially when it starts like talking about her mortgage and everything. Like how many people can relate to that? A lot of people right now. So the point was, make it loud and crazy, and really start to pull that stuff back as you start to go into when she's talking about money, and she starts to get pretty emotional about her grandmom and everything. So it's a mix of dealing with that and then keeping the emotion of the scene where it should be at.
If you are a regular listener to Tone Benders, you've heard me mention the O-Mini miniature omnidirectional microphones from Chris Trevino. I've talked about how I love the neutral frequency response and how they are ultrasonic capable, allowing me to really bend and shape and have a lot of fun with my recordings in post-production. Each pair of mics is handmade by Chris Trevino, a practicing field recordist and a really engaged member of the sound community. He uses high-quality components and puts a lot of work into making and testing each mic to ensure they live up to his own high standards. The O-Minis are available in both XLR and 1/8-inch versions to accommodate any kind of recorder you might have. Between their compact form and robust build quality, they work great with a variety of workflows, from everyday carry recording kits to expeditions where every gram counts and you want to keep your pack weight light. Maybe my favorite thing about both versions of the O-Minis is the price. They are extremely affordable, at $130 American for the plug-in power stereo pairs and $150 for XLR pairs. They offer a lot of value. I suggest you give them a try. At this price point, it is a no-brainer. To learn more, head to chrisatrevino.com/store or click on the link in the description of this episode in your podcast app. When you're working on this film, you know that it's going to go to Netflix, and the vast majority of people are not going to be seeing it in a theater. How does that affect the way you approach it technically? But then also a second question to add on to that is, how does it affect you mentally when you know that every one of your uncles and cousins and friends and like everybody's going to see this film? Like, as I think I said in the intro, it's one of the most watched things ever on the service. There's got to be some kind of mental aspect knowing that everyone is going to talk to you about this.
I'm hoping Uncle Dave has a nice 5.1 set up at the spot because that.
I mean, definitely with effects, I want them to feel loud. With Joe on the stage, we mix this on stage 1 at Paramount.
Paramount. Yeah. So
everything still needs to sound big. I can't tell him, well, this is going to be on someone's TV screen. That's not doable. We had to mix it for him. Joe's other thing is story, and he's so good at writing these dialogue scenes. At the end of the day, as long as, even though I do effects, as long as, the dialogue comes through and the emotion of the scene comes through on the TV, then we've done our job. If someone doesn't, get the bass hit from the guns, then fine. As long as they're getting the emotion from the scene, then your job is done.
We always start, no matter what the project is, because we got caught with this too many times in the past. We always start mixing everything in theatrical Atmos. That's our default start. Even if they say this is 5.1, we'll always mix it in theatrical Atmos. You'll finish a show and a year later, like, oh, we need to we need an Atmos mix of this, and it's just like we're in the middle of 7 other things. Like we don't have time for this. So even if we never use that element, we'll mix in it and put it away. And then when it comes time to master it, then we'll keep switching speakers down. Like the last version of this is the Netflix 2-track, and that I'll usually monitor, believe it or not, on the crappiest headphones possible. So I'll just put in like the most generic Apple headphones, wired headphones, and just listen to the mix back on that to make sure everything's getting through and it's translating as good as it can be on that format. So I think the mastering stage is more important now, where if you're showing the director theatrical Atmos, Netflix wants a near-field theatrical 5.1 near-field 2-track. Yeah. So we're kind of listening to all those formats and making slight adjustments for each one. I think that's just the way it goes now. So I think we're going to use the theatrical Atmos format to creatively bring as much sound-wise to the story, and then we'll deal with each version as we go down from there to make sure we're represented as best we can per version, I think.
And what's the budget of time for that kind of thing? So you finish your Atmos main mix.
Yep.
Everybody signs off on it.
Yep.
I'm assuming Joe's gone writing his next script. And you're then have like multiple days?
Multiple days.
Yeah.
It's like a week.
Yeah,
4
kind
days
of another
a
week. Yeah. So it's there's a day on the Atmos near field. There's a day on the 5.1 near field.
Yes.
Maybe the near field 5.1 and 2-track go into one day.
And are you going into a different mix room for these?
Usually we would move down in rooms usually.
Yeah, because it's very hard or it's not typical for a room to be able to do theatrical Atmos and then near field Atmos. So,
yeah.
And also you don't want to hear, it'd be weird. Yeah, you have to go to a room where the speakers are closer.
Usually we'll get off
Smaller.
the mains and we'll have speakers up in front of the console, and around us they're more, like a 708 type of thing for the near field stuff. And then we'll use the tops that are in the room, and there's broadcast rooms that have broadcast tops compared to theatrical tops. So
I'm wondering if we can talk about the relationship between the composer and the audio post team. There are a couple cool things that your composer has done in this film. Near the end of the film, there's like a car chase scene. And while that's happening, the music is kind of a low bass drone and high strings, leaving the entire mid-range for sound effects to take over. Is that just something that your composer just did, or do you talk about that? How do you come up with that?
I think that Clint has learned over the films that Joe likes the sound effects when he likes the sound effects, and put in a bunch of perky mid-type stuff into the guns and car chase is going to wind up with it being turned down to inaudible levels. So I think it was a good job for him to provide us material where we had some room to mess around, and you can still feel his stuff certainly in those scenes, but in that case, the car chase scene, that's sound effects driving with actually driving in guns. So yeah.
Is Clint on the stage?
No, he came for playbacks. So that's he's not. We see Clint mock-ups sometimes. I think for this we had for the temp we had some of his stuff for the earlier reels. I think maybe we had that car chase scene. Although actually I think they were working on that till the end. So he doesn't come to the stage, but we're getting mock-ups of his stuff pretty early on, so we have a good idea what the final thing is going to be for that. So.
Also, near the end of the film, there's a scene where the two main police officers are both having a conversation with one of the bad guys that they've caught, and they're not together, but it's kind of one conversation. But one is in this kind of like swamp, and the other one is in like an abandoned highway or something like that. It's interesting because the way that you landed on with mixing and cutting the ambiences is we don't actually kind of feel the scene changes anymore. I'm wondering if that was part of the plan from the beginning, or did that come together on the mix stage? How did you kind of merge those scenes into one?
I was going to say, I'm glad it feels that way, because that was very hard, because there was cicadas all over.
All over the
So
dialogue.
you felt that great. Good job, Chase, because those were, because I couldn't add that to the highway side.
I think some of the stuff is coming up in the mix. I think I know it was covered, but because it was cutting back so much, I think it was I can remember a few times. I don't know about that scene in particular, but it was like it's just too distracting, cutting back and forth to all these things. So it was just like let's calm this down. So we're more with the music and the tension of the guys going back and forth.
And definitely start to peel away stuff as they get closer to what you think is A, either in the bag, or B, someone draws a gun. So it just gets emptier subconsciously throughout, which helps it blend together.
Making it empty requires clean dialogue tracks.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and the scene that's, I guess, underneath the overpass there, that dialogue was particularly, I would say, very noisy. So
I would have assumed it was the other half of the conversation that was the problem.
the cicadas were an issue, but I feel like that's like a high frequency sound. So you can go in with RX and get that out, and Craig can do some EQ magic and make that passable. But when you're dealing with noisy dialogue and you're supposed to be in a section where there's no traffic, and you hear traffic in it, that kind of gets a little bit more complicated because they're talking really low too at some points. So that took a couple goes to get that noise reduced and proper. We had even actually found an alt for one of the lines there because it was just like, I think we were on a temp, but we're like, I think Kevin's like, I can't hear this line. And then there's like, okay, well, let's go find alt.
Some mumble mouth.
Yeah, some mumbling going on. And then we found an alt, and that kind of saved that section. So we didn't have to bring him in. We'd have to bring any loops in for that scene. I don't think there actually are any loops in that. But yeah, it was all about trying to, literally just throwing kind of like the kitchen sink at it noise reduction wise to see which one is, because every single plugin has a different way of noise reduction. So I like to kind of like take a step, cut the scene, get it all flowing properly, and then see what's going to give us what we want. I'm also cutting inside of Craig's template, so I know what he's doing in his
mix
chain.
template.
And his mix template. So I kind of know how everything's going to sound with his chain so that I can make like a good judgment call about like what's too much noise reduction, what's just enough, or what's not enough. So with that scene, I think we went through a couple iterations of just seeing like what was going to play. And also we have effects helping us too. Thank goodness we have some like dialogue fill to get us through that, because that was some pretty rowdy stuff in that section. But Joe does not like ADR, so it's like you got to find a way to make it work. And thankfully, we were able to make it work and make it clear enough that the audience could hear it.
We started that a while ago. He has all the same plugins as I do at his studio.
Like he has an HDX card in his system. I have an HDX card in my system. So all our plugins, like whether it's native or everything matches. So when we pass things between each other, we have no issues. Like I hear what he hears. I hear the verbs that he adds to his stuff, because as I'm cutting and I finish a reel, he'll go through and like throw it up in his, large cutting room and go through and start pre-dubbing the material. And then he'll get passed back to me. So then I can take a listen to what he's done, make my adjustments of what I want to do for dialogue wise. But that's kind of like how the process has been for us over, I don't know.
It's kind of developed over the 10-year
Over the 10 years that we've been together, that's kind of like the process that we have. And I feel like that makes it so much easier. Like I know what to expect from Craig. Craig knows what to expect from me. So passing those materials back and forth to each other is extremely helpful.
We can flag stuff early on when we're looking for ADR, or he'll already hear the ADR mixed after we've shot it if we need to make adjustments, or, if we're having to get actors back in or whatever the thing is, we already have a pretty good idea about, what we're going to need to loop this. We can't clean it any more than that. So being able to switch back and forth with that has been a pretty cool workflow.
Well, yeah, and it's extremely helpful because Craig will hear what I've cut, and he'll be like, oh, I think we should get this for ADR. So I'll write it down as ADR cue, or it's like, oh, like look for an alt too, or like, so we kind of have that open dialogue between each other that makes the process go a lot smoother.
Wow. That was an awesome deep dive. Good job.
We're going in.
Earlier, Laura, you brought up the idea of where the majority of the film takes place is in a neighborhood it's Miami, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In a neighborhood in Miami that is abandoned. But as viewers, we don't understand that at the beginning. So this neighborhood has to feel like it's an urban space, but it also has to feel like it's empty. That's a really tricky thing to do. Daniel, do you want to talk about how you cut the effects to try and achieve that?
Well, the Bee Gees, have a cityscape, a skyline going throughout, added a few crickets. Starts off during the day, so, you'll have birds, and then that'll lead into crickets at night. keep it quiet, very few carbys, maybe have one or two just to, move it along subconsciously, not necessarily hear it, you feel it. And then, throughout the scene, just Laura will dip out of it so you don't hear
I think
what's going on.
Kevin suggested like completely getting out of the crickets at some point, right?
Yeah, when the cops roll up.
Yeah, when the cops roll up, and I think when Ben takes his safety off the gun, when Stephen Yeun's walking away, isn't that another spot where really
just to help to create with the tension.
Yeah.
So there we dropped out of like all the crickets and everything, so it's silent.
The chase scene at the end, there's different characters using different guns.
Yep.
And particularly when they're driving beside each other, just shooting randomly out the window, it's some of the coolest gun sounds. Maybe Laura, if you can get into this, the idea of mixing. We've got music, we've got car sounds, we've got the guns flying around. How do you tackle when I'm sure you've got a gazillion tracks? How do you figure out which you're going to focus on when?
I just focus on story point, especially when they're driving. What's the gun that, hits the tire and they swerve? What's the one that makes him, dodge this? And same thing with the garage. What one, hits? When's the time that Matt Damon actually gets a shot in? So I actually mix those particular actions or sequences first, and then for Joe it's always fill it in. So then fill in the car engine, then fill in the ricochets and everything else. So it's
favorite
still
of Joe, the brass falling on the concrete. That's a big Joe sound. He's got to have a lot of that.
But for sure the focus on what's actually moving the story along. Do those sequences first and then go back and fill it in. But it's always like what's going to move the scene along, because that driving shootout scene is long. So what's actually who's getting the shot and who's winning at this sequence, who's ahead at this. And so just focusing on that first.
And between you and Daniel, when you have guns shooting out of a car in an open space, and then the scene before that, there's guns being shot inside the back of an armored vehicle. Between the two of you, figure out the reverbs and such like that. Are you leaving that all to Laura?
No,
or are you cutting?
I sometimes cut, indoor guns. Like for inside the armored truck, I would have more of an inside gunshot. And then obviously, he falls out of the truck, and then I'll go for a more open with more reverb shot, a gunshot there to help minimize.
You pushed a lot of reverb in the truck,
but it's
in the truck and in the garage.
Yeah, but definitely for sure, Dan's got to cut the right gun. I can't have this long
you're not
gunshot
gonna have a long
on the
tail.
inside.
Yeah.
So he definitely cuts the correct guns with spaces. And then it's mostly panning, compression, and a reverb to get it in that particular track. And then
I think because the armored truck is so small, even the garage, I was really pushing them to be like more verb. This would just be like a cacophony of like, it would be so deafening in that thing, letting off. That was AR, I think he's shooting. It was, like more verb. So for me, it was just like I want to hear that like pounding in your head, especially, all over the place with Atmos. She's got the Atmos verbs up, so it's just kind of coming at you from everywhere, which kind of helped me sell the space, I think.
And then you're having to move the reverb when the guns move or turn in what direction they are. So it's a lot of sitting there and panning.
Did you guys have to record anything specifically for this film?
The money counting, I guess, scene where he was like adamant that he had to have like the we had production money counting
the money
going
counting
on.
at the
So that
end.
was like
The machine that counts.
Yeah.
But we recorded, we got a hold of those machines and we recorded them because what was available in production wasn't great. In the temp, we were scrambling a bit because he really wanted it to be this sort of many machines, and we had like one crappy thing, so we were just trying to loop it and scratch something together on the spot. But for the final, we got two of the machines. It's a funny story of that. We rented these machines at some cost, got them into the studio, got the things mic'd up, and like, oh, we got to get some cash. Yeah. And so we went down to the bank, and it was
a holiday.
It was a bank holiday, and so it was closed. So then it was like, well, shit, we need like to get,
And you need ones because you need a full stack for it to keep on counting.
You didn't want to get out a full stack of hundreds?
Nobody here is rolling that deep that we could pull out, like,
We all have like a $5, but it's like we've got $3.
We're not going to get 10 racks out of the machine. There's no way. So we had to find a machine that gave out ones, and we actually did.
Yeah.
But then they would only let out, I think $80 at a time in ones. Yeah. So we're just sitting there like idiots. Like Danny's got a backpack, full of ones.
Backpack full of like ones walking back to work. I was like, this is not okay.
So we had somewhere there's a picture of the stack of ones
Yes.
and 2 money counting machines. That was good times.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me today. Congratulations on the film. As we said, so many people watched this and so many people enjoyed it. And I hope to talk to you all again soon.
Appreciate it, Tim.
Thanks
Thanks.
so much.
Sound Ideas had a great time at NAB this year, connecting with professionals across media, post-production, and broadcast. They've launched a limited-time NAB sale around the event, offering 50% off their catalog of professional sound effect libraries. Due to strong interest, that sale has now been extended for a limited time. So even though NAB is wrapped, there's still a chance to take advantage of the savings, but not for long. You can check out the extended sale at sound-ideas.com. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.